Sardinia, an island known for... what happens here? Well, in Kaiserreich, Sardinia is the result of monarchists who escaped from Italy as the country fell apart. The French exiles felt pretty sympathetic towards them, so they were protected by the Entente. But amongst all the exiles in this faction, they are definitely the weakest. But that doesn't mean they don't have anything going for them. Their focus tree is pretty straightforward and has some very powerful bonuses in it. So with some good strategy, I could turn this underdeveloped island into a nation that will bring the great powers to their knees. Let's start from the beginning. The starting military of Sardinia isn't exactly a force to be reckoned with.
Ooh.
Despite fleeing to an island, we didn't bring many ships with us. Our best ship is a heavy cruiser whose design can be best described as antique. I don't know who I'm gonna have lead this fleet, but I don't trust Giovanni here, claiming to be an air controller when I know this man hasn't seen an aircraft carrier. The current king, Amadeo I, hasn't exactly been taking an active role in the Sardinian government despite ruling for 5 years, seemingly waiting for something to happen to him. When Black Monday hits, that something is finally here. The Sardinian economy was falling, but a great thing about being on such a poor island is when the economy struggles, it can't go down by that much. Still, a bunch of miners wanted us to do something about the economy, but the penalty was so negligible, Sardinia can ignore them for a while. We get bad news soon. Australasia has flipped to cynicalism in response to Black Monday, costing us not only a valuable ally, but the one civ they could give me in my focus tree.
Oh no, no.
New Zealand leaves the country because of this, but we're still significantly worse off. When the Spanish Civil War starts, I had to get involved to help our preferred Spanish faction win. I only had one division to help with, but it was gonna be a good one. Made sure to give my division a general with the scavenger trait because I wanted to loot as much equipment as I could over there. Sardinian Marines led the main force into taking Madrid, and once the city fell, we spearheaded the move south, destroying many Spanish kingdom forces on the way. War was brewing in the Italian peninsula, so that meant I needed to get my game face on to get involved. Amadeo was finally taking an active role in politics by picking someone else to run the country. He chose the more mellow General Maras to pave the way towards the democratization of the country. In September 1937, the Socialist Republic of Italy declared on two Sicilies, and while there was much to be done in Spain, I had to go home. In his first act as Prime Minister, General Maras lifted the state of emergency in Sardinia to allow for elections soon, a decision many in the military were not happy with.
Say what?
I was way too weak to fully get involved, so I just sent 2 volunteer divisions to help hold the line against the Reds. It was painful to watch all my gains in Spain being reversed, but it was a loss I had to live with because my divisions were doing a good job keeping Rome from falling to the Sindes while I continued to mobilize the island. In February 1938, I felt ready enough to get involved. I had 4 good Marine divisions to fight on the mainland and 2 simple ones to guard the homeland. The plan was to fight alongside the Sicilian forces in southern Italy to push north. I don't have enough units to do a good naval invasion in Sardinia, nor enough ships to protect them, so if we got intercepted by the much better Cindy fleet, well, this campaign is pretty much over. So I'm just waiting behind the lines, waiting for the focus to finish, but without me to help them, the Sicilians are struggling. They lost Rome, and the Sindes continue to drive south to where I was training. And all I could do while the Sicilian lines broke was do push-ups, so I had to run away. It felt good when I finally finished the focus, cause my fully orged units put an immediate stop to the Sindhi offensive, sitting in the defensible hills and mountains. As the front line stalled around Napoli, the political lines shifted in Sardinia as the country continued to liberalize with its first elections. The Social Democrats and Liberals were in charge of the country and gonna make the island a much better place. However, despite being in a defensible area, the troops in Two Sicily started struggling. The relentless Sindhi attacks, combined with the constant bombing, forced us to give up land. We were slowly getting pushed back to Naples, and with the Sindhi invasion of Sicily itself, I was starting to think we were cooked. But then, there was hope. from the north, with the Italian Republic declaring war on the Socialist Republic, taking off a lot of pressure in the south. The lines thinned out so much that counterattacks were finally on the menu, so I was able to push one whole tile. I figured the Sindies were too busy fighting on 3 different fronts, they wouldn't try to naval invade me, so I converted my home garrisons to good marines and sent them to Sicily to relieve the island. With Sicilian support, we were able to throw the Reds back, destroying their naval invasion in Sicily and pushing north in Italy, liberating the city of Ancona. With Sicily cleared, I could combine my 6 Marines to do a major offensive to liberate Rome. It seemed like their air force wasn't flying over here anymore, so I quickly cleared the area around Rome, keeping the papacy safe from the Sindi threat. The Italian Republic attempted a naval invasion near Florence, and while the SRR was dealing with that, I started another offensive to liberate Tuscany. And with the help of the other Italian states, I turned this breakthrough into a major pocket of the Sindi forces, destroying the French Commune's volunteer corps with it. They lost about 90,000 men to this, and any chance to come back since they had a smaller army and industry now. My Marines had to keep moving fast north because I needed to wrap this up before the Second Weltkrieg started and the Third Internationale got directly involved. The Marines press on to Milan, cutting off more Sindi forces on the way. They approached the river and planned their attack on the city. When the plan went ahead, it didn't go well. So they recovered and waited to attack again. The AI kept up some pressure on the city so the defenders couldn't fully recover, which made the second battle of Milan a lot easier for me. Their last stand relied on holding Milan, so they couldn't reform their line to stop me once I got through. I kept the Marines marching forward until they reached Turin, and once that city fell, so did the rest of the Socialist Italian Republic. Now it was time to divide up the socialist land between all of us. Despite only having a single-digit amount of divisions, I did enough damage to the Reds that I got 35% of the war score. I fought the other Italian states for control of Piedmont, since this was the most defendable area for me with the state of my army. Fortunately, the AI doesn't know about the taking navy feature yet, so I was able to have all this fleet to myself. I was shocked to see when I checked my decisions for my next move that I could just peacefully annex the other Italian states. The game recognizes me as the strongest power, and while some may say that is debatable, I'll take it because I did hard carry that war against the SRI. So I started talking with the Italian Republic since we're about the same size, and surprisingly, they agreed. I get their land already fully cored, along with inheriting their entire military. Reuniting Italy was gonna be a lot easier than I thought. I could simply walk up to the other Italian states and they just joined me. The Kingdom of Italy is back on the map, and I cut it really close. The Second Weltkrieg could start any day now, and I had to be ready for it. But then something unexpected happened. The Swiss, in a rare act of aggression, decided to annex the rightful Italian land in Campione. I wasn't gonna let this fly. Those were Italians being oppressed by fascists. They had to be liberated. Right after that, the Second Weltkrieg finally started, but just because Europe was exploding didn't mean the Swiss were gonna escape the consequences of their actions. Thanks to all the buffs to my special forces, my Marines were able to do pretty well in the Swiss mountains, but I saw an opportunity here. Before I joined the Weltkrieg, I wanted to grind the mountaineer trade on my general since I was so close. I did a focus that allowed me to claim some land around me for Greater Italy. There was some pretty good stuff I could claim, but if I dared to claim any of the French land, I would not be in the Entente for very long. The Entente entered the war in 1941, and with that began the Halifax Conference. I was kind of worried about this because if I have to work with the Germans, there goes my chance to get South Tyrol. But looking at how the Internationale is popping off, I figure it's about time to join so I could take some pressure off the Germans. Fortunately, the French were on my side at the Halifax Conference and blew it up over Alsace-Lorraine. So South Tyrol was back on the menu, and so was the Swiss since Giuseppe finally got the mountaineer trait. And now that my Marines were fighting to kill, the Swiss there couldn't fight me off for very long. And with them gone, I had a longer border to fight the French, but they weren't ready for me here, so I easily walked in. It wasn't easy for long though, because the Reds quickly threw a bunch of troops and airplanes to stop me. Not only was I being stalled, I was actively getting pushed back to Switzerland. I needed a new plan because Italy had already tried this bashing its army into mountains plan once, and it ended like this, so it was time for something different. I reinforced Switzerland with regular infantry so I could have the Marines naval invade and start a new front. The Marines prepared a landing for Spain where they would threaten a major Cindy nation, force the Third International to divert troops, and hopefully take the pressure off of Portugal. Against 24 Marines, the poor Spanish garrisons didn't stand a chance. But I couldn't have hope for too long because I get a notification that America is getting a war goal on Canada. I need to move fast. My lines may be thin, but so are theirs, so I quickly ran through a large chunk of Spain. With some reinforcements, my army can reach Portugal and end the Cindy occupation. I turned attention northwards after that to reach the Pyrenees and threaten France itself from a new direction. I was nervous at the time because despite the damage I'd done to the Third International, Germany was nearly dead, which would free up a bunch of troops, and the US had its war goal in Canada. I don't like how they're holding that war goal, making me paranoid that they can attack me anytime. Spain soon collapses and the road to southern France is completely open. Both sides are scrambling to get to this front and I push forward into France. But I ran out of time because with the fall of Berlin, this meant Germany is fully cooked. The Reichspakt gets split up by the Cindies and Moscow Pact. So that means I'm gonna have all the Cindies in Europe coming at me. Once again, Italy is fighting another war over the Austrian Alps. I forgot how much CAS matters in vanilla combat, and the AI really likes bombing me from the air, so I need to put AA in all my units. I wasn't smart enough to build my own, but I had scavenged so much from other countries, I could supply my whole army. The only thing the AI loves more than CAS is logi bombing, and my 800 fighters just can't keep up, so it's not looking good for us in northern Italy. I took a risk by not even trying to intercept the bombers in northern Italy and instead tried to establish air superiority in Iberia to counterattack the Reds. This turned the front around from a slow death to putting the initiative back on our side. We made it back to the Pyrenees Mountains to threaten southern France. It was good work, but it did come at a cost. All the railroads in northern Italy were bombed and we could barely supply some of the men. It got even worse. My allies couldn't even handle a simple naval invasion of southern Iberia, so the Third International was spreading over Iberia like a plague again, threatening everything I worked for here. I thought maybe I could push in France and cause enough damage before they caught up to me. The Marines pushed on both sides of the mountains and worked quickly to encircle as many Cindy units as they could in the mountains. When the pincers closed in on each other, we got about an army's worth of units in there. But despite that success, I wasn't going fast enough to escape the International in Spain. The line there was non-existent, and while I would strip other fronts to send divisions over there, the front had grown so big that it wasn't very effective. The British are also trying their best to take me out of the war by hitting my coast with naval invasions, and my port guards are barely able to hold them back. I'm getting desperate. Things are not going well for me. I set a battle plan for Paris and hoped for the best. And maybe to encourage the AI to send some reinforcements to southern France, since I'm practically the only nation here, I gave the Kingdom of France some land. Of course, this doesn't work, and with the Cindies getting so close, I gotta give up Spain to defend the Marines' rear. The push into France was over. The objective was now to slowly retreat to Italy while saving as many units as possible. There is a silver lining here. Since the Cindies were so focused on pushing me out of France, they stripped their lines in Italy, allowing me to counterattack here again and get a bunch of my industry back. I'm supposedly part of a faction, yet like with any group project, it's on one guy to do all the work. I'm sure they'll swear that they're trying to help, but look at the help they're trying to give me. A great thing though is that after years of fighting, the AI has finally exhausted its equipment stockpiles while I have barely been breaking even. This meant the Italians were gonna push into the Alps, again, for the fourth time. This time we had shot down enough French planes that I could fly CAS missions to support my troops. The French had lost so many men that calling their units divisions was a bit generous. I noticed the surrender limit was really high for the French, and that was because they destroyed their war support attacking me in northern Italy. I was thankful for this because I didn't even have to take Paris for the French Commune to call it quits. Finally, France is helping me out by asking to occupy all the French land we took. They really don't deserve this, but I'm trying to be the good guy here, so I hand it over. I mean, look at this war score difference in that peace deal. They're getting all the benefits with barely any of the work. Now we just have to clean up the remaining syndicalists in Europe, but with the main power gone, it is a lot easier. Kind of a plot hole here, but the British didn't evacuate all their troops from Europe and try to fight me, so they lost a dozen divisions for no reason. I mean, it just makes invading the UK a lot easier, especially since I have my newly stolen French fleet to guard the seas to Portsmouth and Dover. I can only imagine how thrilled the British were to see their former allies' navy used against them like this. They had no army to stop us when we landed, so we just kept walking through Britain until we got a peace deal. Canada got Britain back, and I took everything else from the Third Internationale. I released Spain as a whole nation, but I made sure to hold on to Gibraltar as a treat. But Italy isn't done here yet. I have more rightful Italian claims to get back. The Ottomans have been losing a war to the Russians for a while, so I figured it was a good time for me to stroll in to swipe Libya from them while it was easy. It was a request the Ottomans couldn't refuse, so our African colony was restored. I couldn't let the Moscow Pact own a rightful Italian land, so I readied my armies for one final war. We liberated Western Europe from syndicalism, and soon we would liberate Eastern Europe from fascism. The Moscow Pact wasn't taking me seriously at first, so our troops quickly stormed the borders in the east. As their reinforcements swarmed to meet us, we were stalled out by all the extra troops and thousands of planes. We'd shoot down a lot, but there were so many that some would get through. But we weren't the only ones fighting the Russians. Way in the east, the Japanese were pushing into Siberia. I needed all the help I could get because the Russians were pounding our lines and my cities. Northern Italy really can't catch a break in this game, damn. So, I had to pretty much give up everything I did in the south. I knew I couldn't keep trying to bash my army against the Russians here. I needed more fronts to attack. So I started planning my naval invasion of Greece. As I'm trying to turn this war around, the British have the nerve to ask me for Gibraltar. There was only one proper response to this demand. Our troops hit the beaches around Athens soon and rolled over most of the country to meet up with the French, who already landed in Albania. For the first time in this campaign, I worked well with the AI to liberate Greece from its incompetent rulers. As the war continued, although the Russians pushed us back more, we had done a good job of grinding down their fighter count. I just needed to put more factories on air to keep up our air force, and over the next couple of months, the Russian air force was weakened enough that I could start having green air and CAS over air zones, allowing me to push again. The Entente focused its efforts in the Balkans, pushing into Yugoslavia, and pushing from Greece to finally capitulate the country. The battle plans were showing promise in every direction as the Entente marched across the Central European plains. Russia was looking really cooked at this point, with its air force a shadow of its former self and being forced to deal with yet another front while it was losing on the main one. The Indians pushed through Afghanistan and now threatened all of Central Asia. I was gonna make sure they weren't gonna have any troops to send over there. The open plains made it so easy to do offensives that I could get this large pocket in Hungary. When I finally liquidated the pocket, they lost about 1.5 armies worth of men. There was no coming back from this. They couldn't even contest me for the skies anymore, so I just told my guys to go further without any real strategy. Britain then came back to me crying about how they deserve Gibraltar and that it's rightfully British, but what did they do to earn that place back? I told that entitled nation nah. The Pact's lines were completely collapsing in Romania, cutting off their overland escape route to Russia. Those troops had to try to escape by sea, but once they were in the waters, I made sure that it wasn't going to be smooth sailing for them. Things were looking too up for the Entente, so that's why America decided it was finally time to declare on Canada. And somehow the Canadians weren't ready for this, despite them threatening for years.
Watch out! Watch out!
With this invasion happening, Great Britain decided it was time to take over the leadership of the Entente, but let's be serious here. I made sure to correct that error as soon as possible. Fortunately, by this time, the Russian army was in complete ruins and getting pushed in every direction. I could start sending troops overseas to defend what they could in North America. By the time those troops arrived in New England, it was holding strong, but Canada needed all the help it could get to hold the rest of the East. Russia was fully cooked soon afterward, and I took the time to carve the Moscow Pact into some really nice borders that, of course, favored Italy. You may disagree, but I feel this is what peak Italy would look like. The Marines soon arrived in the US, and without any opposing air to stop them, America doesn't have much time left. A simple naval invasion on the East Coast and the combined power of my Marines leaves the American army in pieces. The American people are pretty quick to want out of this war, and the Entente gives them a new life under the much better liberal regime in New England. With that done, I can safely call this campaign a success. Sardinia is quite a challenging nation, but it can be a fun ride, and I hope you guys enjoyed watching it. If you did, make sure y'all like the video so other people will see this video as well. Big thanks to my alumni on Patreon for funding my liberal New World Order dreams, and I'm gonna start answering Patreon questions at the end of videos again, so if you want me to answer some interesting questions you have, make sure to subscribe there. What content other than HOI4 and Victory would I be interested in doing? So right now I'm working on another workers and resources video because wow, that last one really popped off. But I'm also waiting on U-Boat, a sub simulator game, to update to a 1.0 version. We also got Frostpunk 2 coming this month, and I also got X4, so definitely a lot of variety coming soon. Anyways, more content to come, so make sure to subscribe and see you soon.